I said get on your knees now. I'm not doing anything wrong, officer. Don't you dare talk back to me. The confrontation explodes in seconds. Officer Bradley Matthews, a white cop with 12 years on the force, towers over a black woman in expensive running gear at Riverside Park. His hand rests on his weapon while she stands her ground, calm but defiant. You think because you live in this fancy neighborhood you can disrespect the police? I live here. I have every right to be here. We'll see about that. On your knees, hands behind your head. She slowly complies, kneeling on the grass as shocked families watch. Children stop playing. Joggers freeze mid-stride. Phone cameras start recording what looks like another case of police targeting a black woman for simply existing in an affluent area. But something in her eyes suggests this isn't what it appears to be. While Matthews savors his moment of power, the woman's expression holds a secret that will soon turn this entire situation upside down. Have you ever watched someone underestimate their opponent so completely that it destroyed their entire world? 3 months earlier, FBI Director Camille Washington sat in her secure conference room, studying a thick file marked Operation Clean Sweep Officer Bradley Matthews. Photographs, financial records, and witness statements cover the table like pieces of a complex puzzle. Matthews thinks he's untouchable, Camille tells her investigation team. Drug money, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, but he has one critical weakness. His ego makes him predictable. Deputy Director Carter leans forward, concern etched on her face. Director, this is unprecedented. You're talking about putting yourself directly in harm's way. Camille's response is measured but firm. Men like Matthews only see what they expect to see. A black woman in their territory becomes an automatic target. The evidence board reveals the scope of Matthews' corruption. 17 excessive force complaints, all involving people of color. Photos show him collecting envelopes of cash from known drug dealers. Bank records trace luxury purchases far beyond a police salary. But every previous investigation has been blocked by a network of corrupt officials protecting him. He has a pattern, FBI analyst Sarah Kim explains, pointing to a map dotted with red pins. Morning joggers in affluent neighborhoods, black women especially. He uses suspicious person calls to justify harassment, then escalates until he can make arrests. Camille studies the psychological profile. Classic authoritarian personality with racial bias. He needs to feel superior to put people in their place. That compulsion will be his downfall. The plan is audacious in its simplicity. Camille will move into Matthews' patrol area, establish a jogging routine, and wait for him to target her. Hidden surveillance teams will document everything while she gathers evidence of his criminal enterprise from the inside. The risk is enormous, Carter warns. If he discovers your identity before we have enough evidence, he won't, Camille interrupts. Racism makes people blind to possibilities outside their prejudices. Meanwhile, across town, Officer Bradley Matthews collects his weekly $5,000 payment from drug dealer Rico Vega. What Matthews doesn't know is that Vega has been a DEA informant for 6 months, recording every transaction. Keep my corners clean, I keep the feds off your back, Matthews says, pocketing the cash. His partner, Officer Tony DeLuca, stands watch while they conduct business in broad daylight. Matthews' arrogance extends beyond simple corruption. He's built a network of dirty cops, crooked lawyers, and complicit supervisors who ensure his crimes never see courtrooms. To him, the badge isn't about serving and protecting. It's a license to take whatever he wants from people he considers beneath him. The FBI thinks they're so smart, Matthews brags to DeLuca later. They'll never touch us. We own this neighborhood. We own the judges. We own the system. But the system Matthews thinks he controls is already closing in around him. Federal surveillance teams photograph every meeting, record every conversation, track every dollar. What feels like absolute power to Matthews is actually a carefully monitored cage, and he's about to walk directly into the trap Camille has set. The final piece falls into place when Camille moves into the luxury condo overlooking Matthews' patrol route. Hidden cameras and recording equipment turn her new home into a command center. Backup teams position themselves in unmarked vehicles throughout the neighborhood. As Camille laces up her running shoes for the first time in enemy territory, she reviews the operation one final time. Every detail has been planned, every contingency prepared for. Matthews has spent 12 years believing he's untouchable. In 48 hours, that illusion will be shattered forever. The morning of the operation arrives with perfect weather, clear skies and light traffic that will ensure maximum visibility for what's about to unfold. In her condo overlooking Riverside Park, Director Camille Washington receives final briefing updates through her encrypted earpiece while putting on her running gear. "All surveillance teams in position," Agent Miller reports from his concealed location. "Body cameras active, backup units staged, media monitoring systems online. Director, you absolutely sure about this approach?" Camille adjusts her hidden recording device, perfectly disguised as a premium fitness tracker that any affluent jogger might wear. Matthews has destroyed 47 innocent lives over 8 years. Today we document his crimes and end his reign of terror. She performs one final equipment check. The recording device captures both audio and video, her emergency beacon can summon immediate backup, and her real FBI credentials wait in her sports bra for the moment of ultimate revelation. Every detail has been rehearsed dozens of times. Deliberately, she leaves her civilian identification in the car. This isn't an oversight, it's strategy. Matthews needs multiple opportunities to commit felonies on camera, and an ID check will be one of his first demands. "Remember, Director," Deputy Director Carter's voice crackles through the earpiece, "we need him to escalate voluntarily. Any hint that you're baiting him could compromise the entire operation." "Understood." Matthew's psychology profile is clear. His racism and need for dominance will drive the escalation. I just need to exist in his territory. Across town, Officer Bradley Matthews begins his shift the same way he has for months, by collecting his weekly envelope of corruption money. Drug dealer Rico Vega hands over $5,000 in cash, completely unaware that federal agents are recording every transaction from 3 different angles. "Keep my corners clean, I keep the feds off your back," Matthews says, pocketing the bills with practiced ease. His partner, Officer Tony DeLuca, stands watch while they conduct their illegal business in broad daylight, their arrogance making them careless. "Speaking of feds," Matthews grins, "got another uppity one in my territory. Black woman, expensive gear, thinks she owns the neighborhood. Time to remind her how things really work around here." DeLuca chuckles. "Same routine? Always works? Suspicious person calls, escalate until I can justify arrest, then we see how much respect she has after spending a night in booking." What Matthews doesn't realize is that Rico Vega has been a federal informant for 6 months, and every word of this conversation is being transmitted directly to FBI headquarters. The evidence of premeditation will be crucial for federal prosecutors. Matthews radios his corrupt dispatcher, Sergeant Mills, with a completely fabricated report. "Dispatch, this is Unit 142. I've got reports of suspicious activity near Riverside Park. Female black subject, approximately 30 to 40 years old, acting nervous around the playground area. Possible drug activity or casing for theft." "Copy that. 142. Handle as you see fit," Mills responds, already typing the false report that will later be used to justify whatever illegal actions Matthews takes. Mills has been covering for Matthews for 3 years, altering reports and burying complaints. The trap is perfectly baited. Matthews drives toward Riverside Park like a predator stalking prey, completely unaware that every movement is being tracked by federal surveillance teams positioned throughout the neighborhood. Hidden cameras in trees, agents disguised as maintenance workers, and undercover operatives posing as other joggers create an invisible web of documentation. Meanwhile, Camille begins her final jog as bait. She stretches near the playground equipment, her routine innocent and completely normal. Over the past 3 weeks, she's carefully built relationships in the community. Local children wave to her, parents nod in recognition, and regular joggers include her in their morning greetings. "Good morning, Miss Cammy," calls 8-year-old Marcus, riding his bike with training wheels while his mother watches nearby. "Morning, Marcus." "Be careful on those turns," Camille responds warmly. The child has no idea he's about to witness a moment that will change everything. At exactly 8:47 a.m., Matthews' patrol car enters the park perimeter. FBI surveillance teams confirm his approach through encrypted communications. Target vehicle approaching from the east entrance. All units maintain positions and document everything. Camille activates her hidden recording system with a subtle gesture disguised as checking her fitness tracker. From this moment forward, every word and action will be preserved as federal evidence. Excuse me, miss. Matthews exits his cruiser with deliberate intimidation, his hand already resting on his weapon despite no indication of threat. I need to speak with you. Good morning, officer. How can I help you? Camille's response is perfectly polite and professional. The educated tone and confident posture immediately trigger Matthews' worst instincts, exactly as the psychological profile predicted. We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. What exactly are you doing here? I live in the neighborhood, officer. Just finishing my morning run like I do every day. Matthews' eyes scan her expensive athletic gear. Premium running shoes, high-end fitness wear, professional-grade smartwatch. His racial prejudice translates this evidence of affluence into suspicion rather than acceptance. This is a pretty upscale area, he says, his tone loaded with implication. Are you sure you actually belong here? The racist assumption hangs in the morning air like a toxic cloud. Several bystanders slow their morning routines, sensing the ugly tension building in what should be a peaceful park setting. I pay my taxes here just like everyone else, officer. Don't get smart with me, lady. I'm trying to be nice, but your attitude is making this difficult. Nearby, a jogger stops stretching and moves closer, her phone camera already recording. A mother pushing a stroller changes direction to position herself as a witness. Children on the playground equipment pause their games, sensing adult conflict they don't understand. I'm not trying to be difficult, officer. I'm just explaining that I live here. We'll see about that. I'm going to need to see some identification. Now. Of course, it's in my car just over there. When Camille gestures toward her vehicle and takes a step in that direction, Matthews explodes with manufactured rage. Did I tell you to move? I said stay right where you are. This is the escalation point FBI psychologists predicted. Matthews needs to establish dominance, to force submission, to make his target feel powerless. But he's chosen the wrong target. Sir, I was just going to get my ID like you asked. You were attempting to flee the scene. That's resisting arrest. I wasn't running anywhere. I was walking to my car. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. Now. The moment every black person knows arrives. The impossible choice between compliance and resistance, between survival and dignity. Camille chooses the path that serves justice, even knowing it means enduring public humiliation. Officer, I really haven't done anything wrong. You're resisting a lawful order, and that's a crime in this city. Matthews roughly grabs her arms, forcing handcuffs on despite her complete cooperation. The metal clicks echo across the increasingly silent park as more witnesses stop their morning activities to document this escalating injustice. This is what happens when people don't show proper respect for law enforcement, Matthews announces loudly, ensuring his words carry to the growing crowd of witnesses. But his most degrading act is yet to come. Get down on your knees! The brutal command cuts through the morning air like a blade. Children gasp and move closer to their parents. Adults freeze in horror at the public humiliation unfolding before them. Officer, please, there's no need. I said get on your knees. Don't make me repeat myself. Camille slowly lowers herself to the grass, maintaining as much dignity as possible while kneeling in handcuffs before dozens of witnesses. The image is seared into every phone camera, every witness memory, every federal surveillance device. Matthews towers over her kneeling form, savoring his moment of absolute power. He has no idea that the woman forced into this degrading position is the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or that this moment of apparent triumph is actually documenting his complete destruction. Maybe this will teach you some humility about how things work around here, he sneers, keeping her in the kneeling position for nearly 3 minutes while additional patrol units respond to his backup request. In those 3 minutes, phone recordings spread across social media platforms like wildfire. #Black woman kneeling begins trending nationally. News outlets start picking up the footage. Congressional offices receive constituent calls demanding investigation. Hidden in the distance, unmarked federal vehicles move into final positions. FBI agents disguised as concerned citizens begin approaching the scene, ready to intervene if Matthews escalates to physical violence. But Camille's subtle hand signals tell them to maintain distance. She needs complete documentation of his criminal behavior. Officer Sarah Carter arrives as backup, immediately recognizing that something is deeply wrong with this arrest. She approaches Matthews quietly. Brad, what do we have here? What's the probable cause? Suspicious behavior, resisting arrest, failure to comply with lawful orders. Matthews rattles off his standard list of fabricated charges. I'm not seeing any evidence of criminal activity. Carter responds carefully, knowing her body camera is recording everything. She was acting nervous, had an attitude, and tried to flee when questioned. Chen looks at the kneeling woman, noting her expensive athletic gear, her calm demeanor, the complete absence of any threatening behavior. This arrest violates every constitutional principle and department policy she's ever learned. As the situation continues, Matthews makes his final fatal mistake. While keeping Camille kneeling, he quietly plants a small baggie of white powder near her water bottle, thinking no cameras can see his movements. Well, what do we have here? He announces, holding up the planted evidence for everyone to see. But federal surveillance cameras capture every frame of the evidence planting. The moment that will send Matthews to federal prison for decades has just been recorded in high definition from multiple angles. As Matthews forces Camille to her feet and escorts her toward his patrol car, federal agents disguised as joggers and dog walkers document every step. The most powerful law enforcement official in America has just been illegally arrested, and the perpetrator has no idea what storm he's unleashed. The hunter has become the hunted, but Matthews still believes he's won another victory against someone he considers powerless. In less than 24 hours, this delusion will be shattered forever. At Metro Police Headquarters, the booking process begins with routine efficiency that masks the extraordinary events about to unfold. Corrupt Sergeant Mills prepares falsified paperwork while Matthews fabricates a detailed arrest report, each lie documented by federal surveillance equipment hidden throughout the facility. Drug possession, resisting arrest, assault on a police officer, disorderly conduct. Matthews dictates to the booking clerk, his confidence absolute. He's done this 47 times before with other victims, and the system has always protected him. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, FBI tactical teams are already mobilizing. Federal warrants are being signed by judges who've been briefed on Operation Clean Sweep. Evidence compiled over 3 months is being organized for immediate deployment. The largest federal law enforcement response in the city's history is beginning to move. Director Washington's location confirmed at Metro PD booking. Agent Miller reports through encrypted channels. All surveillance data is being compiled in real time. We have everything we need for prosecution. But Camille's ordeal is far from over. The plan requires Matthews to complete his pattern of criminal behavior, and booking is where his worst violations typically occur. You picked the wrong neighborhood to run your little games, Matthews tells her as they walk through the police station corridors. A couple hours in a cell might teach you some respect for authority. Booking Sergeant Davis, one of the few honest cops remaining in the precinct, processes Camille's fingerprints through the federal database. His computer screen immediately flashes red with warnings. Federal employee, high security clearance, notify FBI headquarters immediately. Davis's face drains of color as he reads the alert. He glances at Camille, then at Matthews, then back at his screen. The magnitude of what's happening hits him like a physical blow. Sergeant Mills, Davis calls out, his voice shaking. I need you to see this right now. But Mills is too busy coordinating with Matthews to pay attention. They're already planning the next phase of their standard routine. The interrogation room intimidation that usually convinces victims to accept plea deals for crimes they didn't commit. Let's see how tough she is after a few hours in holding, Mills chuckles. Funny how people's attitudes change when they realize nobody's coming to help them. What they don't realize is that help isn't just coming. It's already surrounding the building. Federal agents have quietly positioned themselves at every entrance and exit. Surveillance vans are monitoring all communications. The entire precinct is effectively under federal observation. In the interrogation room, Matthews begins his standard intimidation routine, unaware that hidden FBI cameras are documenting every word for federal prosecutors. Here's how this works, Matthews explains, settling into his chair with practiced arrogance. You're looking at serious charges. Drug possession in a school zone carries a mandatory minimum. Resisting arrest, assault on an officer, we're talking real prison time. Camille maintains her cover perfectly, playing the role of a frightened civilian while internally cataloging each criminal violation. False imprisonment, extortion, civil rights violations under color of law. The charges against Matthews are mounting by the minute. But I'm feeling generous today, Matthews continues. Maybe we can work something out. Community service, probation, keep this off your record. Of course, that kind of consideration requires appreciation. What kind of appreciation? $10,000, cash, and you forget this whole thing happened. The bribery attempt is captured in crystal clear audio and video. Federal prosecutors will later call this moment the smoking gun that proved Matthews' systematic corruption. What if I can't pay that much? Matthews leans forward, his true nature fully revealed. Then you'll learn what prison is really like for people who think they're better than everyone else. And trust me, the guards know how to handle attitude problems. The threat of violence while in custody adds another federal charge to Matthews' growing list of crimes. But he's far from finished. Of course, there might be other ways to show appreciation, he suggests, his implication unmistakable. Depends how badly you want to avoid those felony charges. Sexual coercion under color of authority, another federal crime captured on recording. Matthews has no idea he's systematically destroying his own life with every word. Meanwhile, Chief Rivera's phone explodes with calls from federal officials, city council members, and media outlets. The footage from the park has gone viral, generating hundreds of thousands of views and shares across social media platforms. Chief Rivera, this is Deputy Director Carter, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need to discuss the arrest of one of our personnel immediately. I'm sorry, what? FBI personnel? There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Chief. Your Officer Matthews has just arrested FBI Director Camille Washington. I strongly suggest you get to your precinct immediately. The phone call that ends careers has just been made. Chief Rivera's face goes white as he processes the implications. His department has just declared war on the federal government, and he's about to lose catastrophically. Across the precinct, dominoes begin falling in rapid succession. Sergeant Davis finally manages to get Mills's attention, showing him the federal alert on his computer screen. Mill's reaction is immediate and visceral. He stumbles backward, knocking over a chair. This can't be right. Mills whispers, staring at the screen. She was acting like... Acting like what, Sergeant? Davis demands. Acting like a person who deserves basic human dignity. The racist assumptions that drove Matthews' actions are now being exposed throughout the department. Every officer who supported the arrest, every supervisor who didn't question the obvious constitutional violations, every dispatcher who processed false reports, they're all about to face federal investigation. Officer Carter, who witnessed the arrest and tried to de-escalate, approaches Matthews in the hallway. Brad, we need to talk right now. Not now, Carter. I'm busy teaching someone a lesson about respect. You need to stop whatever you're doing immediately. That woman you arrested, she's FBI Director Camille Washington. Matthews laughs dismissively. Right, and I'm the Attorney General. You're too gullible, Carter. Chen grabs his arm, forcing him to stop. I'm serious, Brad. Check the computer, check her fingerprints, check anything. You've just arrested the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. For the first time since the arrest began, doubt creeps into Matthews' expression. He follows Carter to the booking computer where Sergeant Davis shows him the federal alert that's been flashing for 20 minutes. Matthews stares at the screen, his confidence evaporating as reality crashes down around him. The photograph matches perfectly. The woman he forced to kneel, the woman he handcuffed and humiliated, the woman he just threatened and attempted to extort. His legs give out. He grabs the desk for support as the full magnitude of his situation becomes clear. He hasn't just committed a crime. He's committed dozens of federal crimes against the most powerful law enforcement official in America, all while being recorded by federal surveillance equipment. This can't be happening, he whispers. This can't be real. But it is real. And it's about to get much worse. Outside the precinct, FBI vehicles are taking positions. Inside, federal agents are preparing to execute arrest warrants. The corrupt network that has protected Matthews for years is about to crumble in a matter of hours. Chief Rivera arrives at the precinct to find chaos. Officers are panicking, supervisors are destroying documents, and the entire command structure is collapsing as everyone realizes they're about to face federal investigation. The hunter has become the hunted, and there's nowhere left to run. In Chief Rivera's office, the moment of truth arrives with devastating clarity. Camille reaches into her sports bra and produces her real FBI credentials, a gold badge and identification card that instantly transforms the entire situation. Director Camille Washington, Federal Bureau of Investigation. she announces calmly, her voice carrying the authority of someone who commands the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world. The revelation hits like a nuclear bomb. Matthews, who moments earlier was savoring his power over a kneeling woman, now stares at credentials that represent everything he's spent his career trying to avoid: federal oversight, real accountability, and justice that can't be bought or intimidated. "This has to be fake," Matthews stammers, his world collapsing in real time. "This can't be real, you're just some—" But Chief Rivera's pale face confirms what Matthews refuses to accept. The chief has seen those credentials before, in federal briefings and joint task force meetings. They're absolutely authentic. "Operation Clean Sweep, Officer Matthews," Camille explains with surgical precision. 3 months of federal investigation into your criminal enterprise. Every bribe, every planted evidence case, every civil rights violation, all documented and ready for prosecution. The pieces start falling into place with horrifying clarity. FBI agent Miller enters the office, no longer disguising his federal authority. Behind him come more agents, each carrying boxes of evidence that represent months of meticulous investigation. "Bradley Matthews, you're under arrest for conspiracy, drug trafficking, extortion, civil rights violations under color of law, and racketeering," Miller announces, producing federal arrest warrants. Matthews' face cycles through disbelief, panic, and desperate calculation. Wait, this is entrapment. You set me up. This whole thing was planned." "Every word you spoke was your choice," Camille responds. "Every action you took revealed your true character. We simply provided the opportunity for you to expose yourself." The scope of the operation becomes clear through rapid revelations that shatter Matthews' understanding of reality. The bystanders in the park weren't random witnesses. They were federal agents documenting everything. The children who waved at Camille weren't just friendly neighbors. Some were family members of FBI personnel, part of her carefully constructed cover identity. Most devastating of all, Rico Vega steps into the office, no longer playing the role of drug dealer. "DEA agent Ricardo Vega," he introduces himself to Matthews' horror. "Thanks for all those recorded conversations about corruption. Federal prosecutors love audio evidence." Matthews literally stumbles backward, his hand reaching for a chair to steady himself. His biggest source of illegal income was federal law enforcement all along. Every bribe, every protection scheme, every criminal conspiracy, all recorded and documented by the very people he thought he was controlling. "The jogging route, the expensive gear, the confident attitude that triggered your racism," Camille continues, "all designed to activate your predatory instincts. We studied your psychological profile for months. You're remarkably predictable when your prejudices are activated." Deputy Director Carter arrives with additional evidence that transforms Matthews' mounting panic into complete despair. Financial records showing his illegal assets, recorded conversations proving conspiracy, witness statements from his previous victims. The mountain of evidence is overwhelming. 47 victims over 8 years, Carter announces. Drug money totaling $2.3 million. Civil rights violations that will send you to federal prison for decades. The media explosion begins immediately. News outlets across the country pick up the story of an FBI director conducting an undercover operation that exposed systematic police corruption. Social media platforms crash from the volume of shares and comments as the footage goes viral globally. FBI director takes down corrupt cop ring while undercover dominates every news cycle. The story transcends local crime to become a symbol of accountability and justice prevailing over corruption and racism. But the most satisfying moment comes when Matthews finally understands the true scope of his defeat. Officer DeLuca is arrested simultaneously at his home. Sergeant Mills is handcuffed at his desk. The entire network of corruption that protected Matthews for years crumbles in coordinated federal raids. "You recorded everything," Matthews realizes, his voice barely a whisper. "From the very beginning, you were building a case. Every racist assumption, every civil rights violation, every moment you thought your badge made you untouchable," Camille confirms. "All documented with federal precision." The internet detectives emerge within hours, analyzing every frame of the viral footage with new understanding. Comments flood social media. "Did you see her check her watch at 2:15? Her calm expression makes sense now. She was in control the entire time." The phrase "getting Washingtoned" enters popular culture immediately. describing someone who underestimates their opponent so completely that it leads to their total destruction. Memes proliferate, showing Matthew's shocked face alongside captions about karma and justice. Meanwhile, the constitutional violations pile up like evidence in a federal courtroom. Illegal detention, racial profiling, evidence planting, bribery, extortion, sexual coercion, each crime captured in high-definition video and audio by federal surveillance equipment. "This isn't just about you," Camille tells Matthews as handcuffs click around his wrists. "This is about every person you've terrorized, every family you've destroyed, every community you've traumatized with your badge. The power dynamic has completely reversed. The man who forced a woman to kneel in public humiliation now faces decades in federal prison. The racist who assumed superiority based on skin color discovers that intelligence, preparation, and justice recognize no racial boundaries." As Matthews is led away in federal custody, the true genius of Camille's operation becomes clear. She didn't just catch one corrupt cop. She used his own prejudices and criminal compulsions to expose an entire network of corruption that had operated with impunity for years. The hunter became the hunted, but the prey was actually the predator all along. Within 48 hours of Matthews' arrest, the largest federal corruption investigation in the city's history unfolds with devastating efficiency. FBI raids hit 23 locations simultaneously. Corrupt officers' homes, evidence lockers, safe houses where bribes were stored, and the offices of lawyers who helped cover up crimes for years. The scope of Operation Clean Sweep expands beyond anyone's expectations. What began as an investigation into one corrupt cop reveals a criminal enterprise involving 47 officers, 12 prosecutors, 6 judges, and millions of dollars in stolen drug money flowing through a network that spans the entire justice system across multiple jurisdictions. Matthews sits in federal holding, still wearing his orange jumpsuit, facing FBI interrogators who present evidence so overwhelming that denial becomes impossible. Every conversation recorded, every financial transaction traced, every victim identified and ready to testify in federal court. "Let's start with Rico Vega," Agent Miller begins, placing thick audio transcripts on the metal table. 3 years of recorded conversations where you discuss splitting drug money, intimidating witnesses, and planting evidence on innocent citizens. Your own words, Officer Matthews, captured in high-definition audio. The psychological breakdown begins immediately. Matthews, who spent years believing himself untouchable due to his badge and connections, discovers that federal agents documented conversations he'd completely forgotten having. Phone taps, hidden microphones, surveillance footage from locations he thought were secure. Every criminal act preserved for prosecution. "We have your bank records showing deposits that exactly match your bribery schedule," Agent Carter continues, spreading financial documents across the table. Luxury car purchases, expensive vacations to Europe, private school tuition for your children, all paid with dirty money while you arrested innocent people for drug crimes you knew they didn't commit. The evidence room contains 12 bankers' boxes of documentation that took federal forensics teams months to compile. Financial investigators traced every dollar Matthews stole, every asset purchased with corruption money, every family member who unknowingly benefited from his criminal enterprise. The federal government will seize everything under asset forfeiture laws, leaving his family destitute and homeless. The interrogation videos released through court proceedings show Matthews' complete psychological collapse as the scope of federal evidence becomes clear. The man who terrorized communities for 8 years breaks down crying when shown footage of himself planting drugs on teenagers whose lives he destroyed for arrest statistics. "Please," Matthews begs in one recorded session, "my wife doesn't know anything. My kids don't deserve this. Can't we work something out? I can give you bigger fish, more important people." But federal prosecutors aren't interested in deals. The evidence is too overwhelming, the crimes too serious, the public demand for justice too intense for plea negotiations that might reduce his sentence significantly. Meanwhile, Matthews' victims emerge from years of enforced silence to tell their stories in congressional hearings that grip the nation. The hearing room is filled with testimony that reveals the true human cost of his crimes: lives destroyed, families torn apart, communities terrorized by badges that were supposed to protect them from harm. Maria Santos, A single mother, Matthews arrested on fabricated drug charges 3 years earlier, addresses the committee with devastating emotional impact. He planted cocaine in my purse while my children watched from his patrol car. I spent 6 months in jail, lost my job, lost my apartment. My kids went into foster care because Officer Matthews wanted to make his monthly arrest quota look good to his supervisors. Her testimony, broadcast live across multiple networks, generates millions of social media responses. Viewers share their own stories of police harassment, creating a national conversation about systemic abuse of power that extends far beyond Matthews' individual crimes. The ripple effects multiply exponentially across social media platforms. The footage of Camille being forced to kneel has generated over 500 million views across all platforms within the first month. Documentary filmmakers compete aggressively for exclusive rights to tell the complete story. Netflix announces a limited series starring Academy Award-winning actors. Hollywood agents flood Camille's FBI office with movie deals worth tens of millions of dollars. But the most powerful response comes from other police departments nationwide, where chiefs watch the footage and realize their own departments could harbor similar corruption networks. Internal affairs divisions launch comprehensive investigations. Officers who previously stayed silent about corruption begin coming forward with information about colleagues they've suspected for years. The Washington effect has become a recognized phenomenon in law enforcement circles across America. Corrupt cops suddenly become paranoid about potential federal investigation lurking behind every arrest. Anonymous tip lines overflow with reports of police misconduct as citizens gain confidence that their complaints might actually result in accountability. The mere possibility that any arrest could involve undercover federal agents creates systemic behavioral change through fear of consequences. The psychological impact on police culture proves profound and lasting. Training academies begin using the footage as mandatory viewing for recruits. The question, could this be an FBI director, becomes a standard consideration in use of force training. Racist assumptions that previously operated unchallenged are now recognized as career-ending liabilities. Matthews' interrogation continues for days as federal prosecutors methodically build their case with scientific precision. His high-priced defense lawyer attempts plea negotiations repeatedly, but the evidence is too overwhelming and the federal charges too serious for any significant sentence reduction. 23 separate federal charges, Prosecutor Sarah Kim explains during a recorded plea conference: civil rights violations under color of law, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, extortion, bribery, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, money laundering. We're looking at mandatory minimum sentences that exceed your natural lifespan, Officer Matthews. The community response transforms Riverside Park into a powerful symbol of justice and resistance that attracts visitors from around the world. Peaceful demonstrations draw thousands of supporters carrying signs reading, "Justice for Director Washington" and "End Police Terror." The memorial bench where Camille used to pause during her morning runs becomes a pilgrimage site where people leave flowers, personal stories, and drawings from children thanking her for making them feel safe in their own neighborhoods. International media coverage elevates the story beyond American borders, with foreign journalists interviewing experts about systemic racism in American policing. The footage plays in police academies worldwide as a cautionary example of how prejudice and corruption ultimately defeat themselves when confronted with superior intelligence and federal authority. Congressional hearings draw compelling testimony from law enforcement experts, civil rights leaders, constitutional scholars, and former police officers who've witnessed corruption firsthand. The evidence presented leads to bipartisan legislation requiring enhanced federal oversight of police departments with documented patterns of civil rights violations. The Washington Act passes both houses of Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support, mandating FBI monitoring of local police forces and creating severe federal penalties for departments that systematically cover up officer misconduct. Camille's strategic sacrifice of her own dignity creates lasting institutional change that will protect future generations from police abuse. The psychological profiles of Matthews and his co-conspirators reveal disturbing patterns that extend far beyond individual racism into systemic cultural problems. FBI behavioral analysts identify deficiencies in police training, hiring practices, and accountability structures that enable corruption networks to flourish for years without detection or consequence. Matthews' former victims organize powerful support groups and advocacy organizations that become influential voices in policy reform. Their collective testimony becomes powerful enough to influence legislative decisions, elect reform-minded officials, and educate communities about recognizing and reporting police misconduct through proper channels that can't be suppressed by local corruption. Technology companies develop innovative new tools for documenting police encounters, directly inspired by the sophisticated surveillance equipment successfully used in Operation Clean Sweep. Enhanced body camera systems, civilian recording applications, and real-time federal monitoring networks emerge from careful study of the case's technical aspects. The financial investigation reveals corruption reaching levels that shock even experienced federal investigators who've handled major organized crime cases. Matthews and his criminal network stole over $12 million from drug seizures, evidence lockers, and community programs specifically meant to help the neighborhoods they were supposed to protect and serve. Asset forfeiture proceedings begin immediately against all network members. Matthews' house, luxury cars, boats, investment accounts, and even his children's college education funds are seized as proceeds of criminal enterprise. The message to other potentially corrupt officers nationwide is unmistakable. Crime doesn't pay, and federal agents will methodically recover every stolen dollar while destroying the lives of those who betray their oath. The hunter became the hunted, but the real victory belongs to every community that will be safer because justice finally prevailed over corruption and prejudice. The federal courthouse steps are packed with media and supporters as Officer Bradley Matthews faces his final day of judgment. After months of overwhelming evidence, the moment of ultimate accountability has arrived. Inside the courtroom, Matthews sits in orange prison clothing, his police career forever ended. The man who once commanded through fear now appears diminished, his arrogance replaced by hollow understanding of consequences. Judge Patricia Morrison, a respected federal jurist, presides over proceedings broadcast live nationwide. The packed courtroom includes Matthews' victims, FBI officials, and journalists documenting this historic moment of police accountability. Mr. Matthews, Judge Morrison begins, you have pled guilty to 23 federal charges, including civil rights violations, conspiracy, extortion, and racketeering. These crimes represent systematic betrayal of your oath to protect and serve. The guilty plea came after defense attorneys realized fighting the evidence would only worsen sentences. Recorded conversations, financial documents, and surveillance footage created an unbeatable prosecution case. Victim impact statements begin with devastating power. Maria Santos approaches the podium, her voice strong despite trauma Matthews inflicted 3 years earlier. Your Honor, Officer Matthews planted drugs in my car while my children watched. I lost my job, my home, my children went to foster care. Today proves justice is possible for people like me. 12 other victims follow with similar testimonies. Lives shattered by false arrests, families destroyed by planted evidence, communities terrorized by corrupt badges. Each story adds weight to federal sentencing guidelines. Director Camille Washington takes the stand in her formal FBI uniform, commanding complete courtroom attention. Your Honor, I didn't seek personal vengeance with Operation Clean Sweep. I sought justice for every person lacking privilege to hold corrupt officers accountable. My brief humiliation served a greater purpose, proving no one is above the law. Her testimony resonates beyond the courtroom through live broadcasts and social media, generating millions of views as dignity triumphs over degradation. Matthews' attorney makes a desperate plea for leniency, arguing systemic problems created his client's behavior. But Judge Morrison's response reflects the severity of constitutional crimes. Mr. Matthews, your actions weren't mistakes. They were deliberate crimes against the Constitution you swore to defend. Evidence shows systematic targeting of minorities and complete disregard for civil rights. The sentence delivers complete justice. Matthews receives 25 years in federal prison without parole, plus 5 years supervised release. Financial penalties include total asset forfeiture and $12 million victim restitution. Furthermore, you are permanently barred from law enforcement, security work, or public trust positions. Your pension is forfeited, and you will register as a convicted felon for life. The gavel falls with finality echoing nationwide. Social media explodes as #JusticeServed trends globally. Footage of Matthews in shackles becomes iconic imagery of accountability prevailing over corruption. Individual justice represents only part of systemic change Operation Clean Sweep initiated. The Washington Act establishes federal oversight of police departments with civil rights violations, mandatory bias training, and civilian oversight boards with real authority. Matthews' co-conspirators face coordinated justice. Officer DeLuca gets 18 years, Sergeant Mills 15 years. The network that protected corruption for years crumbles completely under federal prosecution. Financial restitution provides meaningful compensation to destroyed lives. Families receive funds for legal expenses, lost wages, counseling, and educational opportunities denied during false imprisonment. The cultural impact transforms American understanding of power dynamics. Getting Washingtoned enters permanent vocabulary, describing how prejudice blinds people to opponents' true capabilities. Matthews begins his sentence at maximum security federal prison, where former victims' families find peace knowing he can never again terrorize innocent people. But the greatest consequence emerges in communities where children no longer fear police. Riverside Park becomes a symbol where families gather without anxiety about harassment or false arrest. The case becomes a required curriculum in law enforcement academies worldwide, demonstrating how corruption defeats itself when confronted with intelligence and accountability. International observers study American police reform efforts inspired by the case. Other countries implement similar oversight programs based on lessons learned from Operation Clean Sweep. The legacy belongs not to Matthews' downfall, but to every community made safer by proof that justice can prevail when good people refuse to accept injustice as inevitable reality. 1 year later, Riverside Park buzzes with the same morning energy, but everything has changed. Families jog together without fear. Children play freely while their parents chat with police officers who now patrol with genuine community partnership rather than predatory surveillance. Director Camille Washington returns to her familiar jogging route, but the experience feels transformed. Officers nod respectfully as she passes. Community members wave warmly, their gestures carrying gratitude that extends far beyond simple recognition. The memorial bench has been replaced with a beautiful monument featuring scales of justice and an inscription, where courage confronted corruption, dignity defeated prejudice, and one person's sacrifice created lasting change for all. The measurable impact speaks volumes about systemic transformation. Police misconduct complaints have dropped 89% citywide. The Washington Institute, Camille's new foundation, has trained over 2,000 undercover investigators across 47 states. Operation Clean Sweep methodology is being implemented in departments nationwide. Matthews serves his federal sentence at a maximum security facility, his story now taught in police academies as a cautionary tale about how prejudice and corruption inevitably lead to destruction. His former victims have rebuilt their lives with restitution funds and found healing through advocacy work that prevents others from suffering similar injustice. The viral footage continues generating social change 18 months later. Documentary films, educational programs, and university courses use the case to teach about constitutional rights, systemic racism, and the power of strategic intelligence over brute force. International impact has been equally profound. Police reform movements in 12 countries cite the Washington case as proof that accountability is possible when good people refuse to accept corruption as inevitable. The footage plays in human rights training sessions worldwide. Technology improvements inspired by the operation now protect millions of citizens. Enhanced body cameras, civilian recording apps, and real-time federal monitoring systems create transparency that makes future corruption significantly more difficult to hide. But perhaps the most meaningful change appears in the faces of children who now see police officers as protectors rather than threats. The playground where kids once watched Camille being humiliated now hosts community events where officers and families build positive relationships. The Washington effect has become more than a cultural phenomenon. It represents a fundamental shift in how Americans think about power, accountability, and the possibility of justice prevailing over corruption when ordinary people take extraordinary action. The ripple effects continue expanding through social media, where the story has been shared over 500 million times across all platforms. Comment sections overflow with personal stories of police encounters, creating national conversations about reform that extend far beyond Matthew's individual crimes. Congressional legislation inspired by the case continues evolving. The Washington Act has been strengthened twice with bipartisan support, creating stronger federal oversight and more severe penalties for departments that cover up misconduct. As Camille completes her morning run, she pauses at the Justice Monument where fresh flowers appear daily, tributes from community members whose lives were changed by her courage to endure humiliation in service of a greater cause. Her phone buzzes with a text message. New target identified. Operation Garden Path is approved for implementation. She smiles, knowing that somewhere in America, another corrupt officer is about to discover that appearances can be deceiving and justice never sleeps. The case proves that change is possible when intelligent people refuse to accept injustice. It demonstrates that courage doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looks like someone quietly kneeling in a park while gathering evidence that will transform an entire system. What would you do if you witnessed injustice that seemed too powerful to challenge? How can each of us contribute to accountability in our own communities? Share your thoughts about creating change through intelligence, courage, and strategic action. Remember that every person deserves dignity, respect, and equal treatment under the law. That's not just an ideal. It's our shared responsibility as citizens of a democracy that only works when good people take action against corruption and prejudice. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories proving that justice is possible when we refuse to accept inequality as inevitable. Like this video if you believe accountability should apply to everyone regardless of their position or authority. The story of Director Washington and Officer Matthews reminds us that power without accountability is tyranny, but intelligence combined with courage can defeat even the most entrenched corruption. Never underestimate someone based on appearance. You never know who might be watching, recording, and ready to serve justice.
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.